I'm your host, Heather, and you are here listening to Brewing Murder and Mystery. And I have a very fun, bizarre case for you. But it is April 8th. I almost said August. Woo. Before I know it, it's going to be August. But it's April 8th. Did y'all watch the eclipse today? I got to see it where I'm at. It was about 97% of an eclipse. So it was still pretty cool. And yeah, now I'm moving on with the rest of my day in my spinny chair and I'm here with you. So hooray. I'm going to attempt to do my makeup again today while I tell you about this super bizarre case. Now, before we start, I want you to just think, don't close your eyes, especially if you're driving, but I want you to think, do you believe that ghosts can communicate with us? And if your answer is yes, do you believe that a ghost could actually solve their own murder? Now, if you answered yes, then I want to know down below why you think they don't all just come back and tell us. But until we get through the story, let's figure this out because we are talking today about Teresita Basa. Hopefully that's how you pronounce it, Teresita Basa. And she is actually known for solving her own case. It's a bizarre one. It's totally bizarre. And I had my predisposition thoughts on what I thought that meant, but it did not mean what I thought that it meant. And before I get y'all confused and crazy, we're just going to dive right into it. But before we do, please hit the like and subscribe button. Leave me a comment. Those things really, really help support my page. It keeps me motivated to keep on making this content because without you guys, why am I even here? Really, why am I here? I could be doing other things, but I care about you, the ones that have subscribed. I care about you guys. Well, the ones that haven't also, but the ones that have, you just, okay, just say, Heather, shut up and tell us a story. All right. So Teresita Basa was born in March 13th of 1929. Whew, this is a rough start already. And she was born in the Philippines and she came from a well-off family. So in the Philippines, they were really considered high class. Oh my Lanta. Really considered upper class. Maybe that means high class too. Maybe that's my brain connected it. But she was not middle class society. Her family was well off. And so this kind of led to her having opportunities that not everybody can have. For example, she was the only child, so her parents just loved her and I mean, maybe spoiled her rotten isn't the exact terms, but she was really well taken care of. She loved gardening and she was able to really find this just amazing gift and desire and talent for music. So her parents actually bought her own piano. And that might not seem like a big deal in America because I feel like every time you look on Facebook Marketplace, someone's got a piano for free. But I mean, in the Philippines, if you know anything about the Philippines, this is a big deal. Not everybody, I mean, some people don't have running water in their house. So to have your own piano is a big deal. And then her father was just really, really known as a successful businessman. And I'm not sure what he did for a living, but he was just really well known in the community and they were just that family. Keeping up with the Joneses kind of situation is it's just the vibe I got. It's super simple. That's just how I came to understand it. But she was considered an old soul, which I don't know if you ever met a kid like that. It's that idea that they really like things that older people would like in the sense of maybe art, music. I mean, she liked gardening when she was a kid. Not that you know what I mean. It's just somebody who kind of, although they're little, they're not super into childish things. They like older things. And that was her. And I forgot my sponge to do my eyes. But I digress. We're moving on here, friends. So Her family also loved to travel. And again, things that like not the average everybody gets to do kind of situation. Now, during World War II, the village that they lived in was invaded by Japan. And this made life as a teenager, she was a teenager by this time because we're jumping to like the 40s, just, I mean, I don't know. What do you imagine if you were sitting there in your town, got invaded, during war, the stresses and everything that would put on you? And her family considered moving, but because of her dad's like business dealings, it sounded like they basically told him he wasn't allowed, which, I mean, golly, that would be stressful in itself. So he was not allowed to move, but this didn't keep Teresita from moving. And because she was already in her teenage years, they decided to move her to the capital of the Philippines in hopes that she would basically be able to continue at the Royal College of Music in her piano stuff. And she ended up getting a degree in piano forte. I mean, like this girl just, piano was her life, like everything. It was a religious experience, is what I came to understand about uh Teresita and her love for music. So she gets her degree and then she decides to go off to Europe. And I don't know if this was like a graduation celebratory thing or she just had the opportunity, but she jumped on it and I would too. And then while she was out in Europe, she ended up meeting this couple that lived in Chicago. And they just really hit it off. And they were like, hey, whenever you want, come visit us in Chicago. Well, shortly after her Europe trip, she's like, this is the time of my life. I should just go and visit these people. So she shortly goes off and decides to visit this couple in Chicago. Now, when she gets to Chicago, regardless of what you think about Chicago today, Chicago has changed a lot. And it used to be like this really happening place that people wanted to be at. Yeah, it's had crime and things forever, but it gave Teresita just this love for the United States. And she fell in love with Chicago. The culture, the nightlife, the music. I mean, oh my goodness, back then, like jazz was probably, I love me some jazz. And if she is super into music, it makes sense that this would be something she's really, really excited about. Just the whole culture shift, the whole change in music. And I mean, it would be amazing. And I don't blame her. So she decides that she's going to enter and enroll into a foreign exchange program. And then this way she can stay and she enrolls in the University of Illinois. Now, because she's completely fallen in love with the United States, she like wants to move her entire life here. She starts off with her credits. She wants to graduate, but just a few credits short, she ends up getting this opportunity to go to Washington, D.C. And while she's there, she gets this job as a typist. Now, I don't know if the piano playing with all the no looking no looking, typing, pianoing, all made her really good at this job, but she didn't love it. She was not in love with this job. It was not her dream job. She wanted to make money off of music. So she just had this dream she was shooting for, but the typing thing was going to have to just work for now. While she's doing the typing career, she ends up meeting a man named Edward Omar. And basically for her, it was love at first sight. She was infatuated with this guy, and the timing was not ideal. Now, not only does she meet this guy that she's thinking, this could be my dream guy, but her visa is about to expire. I mean, come on. Bad timing, right? Like, I just met this guy. I'm totally in love. He lives in the United States, which she's totally in love with. And now I have to return home. So they decide that they're going to take a go at this long-term relationship. She heads back to the Philippines and starts immediately applying for her citizenship. I don't know why they didn't just get married. Maybe I'm the only one that's like, what's the easy way? can I just marry you and stay in America? Like, is that fraud? I don't know. She's really in love with him. Maybe that is. Maybe that was me. Side note, I digress. He travels to see her a couple of times while she's in the Philippines. And the last time he's there, she doesn't know it's going to be the last time. But because of her father's connection, he does a little background digging and comes to find out that Edward is not a very good boy. He has been visiting brothels when he comes to visit Teresita. Of course, when he finds out, he has to break the news to his daughter, like, hey, this guy that you're in love with is visiting a brothel, and it looks real bad and real shady for our family. So she breaks it off with him. She's devastated. And this kind of puts a wrench in her plans. She's thinking, do I even go back to America? Maybe I should stay here and just try my life, like try my career here. She can't help it. I mean, America is calling her. So she's 42 at the time, and she gets her citizenship. She decides to move back to the United States. With her, she has 2 suitcases and $400. That's all she's got. She's like, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to try to make myself successful, right? Like that's her goal. Her goal is to be super successful. Okay, I'm back. Y'all know I can't do my eyes while I'm doing this. So I jumped out. I'm back. So she moves over there, $400, enrolls in the university that she had already attended before, and she's like, I'm going to try to make a go out of it. She's trying to play music. There was even some research that I came across saying that she was like kind of giving free lessons for like kids and stuff because she just loved it that much, which just sounds amazing. I would love to learn something from someone who loves their like art and craft that much. They're always so inspirational, I think, versus the teachers that don't like their jobs. Woo, I'm just going off on tangents today. So because of her situation with coming back to the university, she has to find herself a job. I mean, $400 even back then wouldn't have lasted very long. And she decides to take this reception job, just as like basically covering her basic needs. But she quickly comes to the conclusion that this job is not going to afford her any extras, right? Like she loves to travel, she loves music, but she is not going to be able to do any of that on this salary. So while she's in the school, she finds out that they have this program that she enrolls in, and it's a respiratory therapist program, which takes her 2 years to complete and then graduate. But she just sticks with it, and she ends up getting herself a job at this local hospital from where she was at. But the job pays a lot better than the receptionist job. So she gets the opportunity to move to like a better area, a nicer apartment, and she's not super far from her new job. So it's just like win-win. Life is looking up for her. Now, because of Edward like putting her through the ringer for the whole like self-esteem situation, she has a really hard time trusting people. You don't say. Some of us have trust issues too, Teresita. And this even affects her in her like friendship life. Like she just doesn't really trust anybody. So her circle is not big. And once she gets to this hospital job, she is able to start making more friends and kind of getting to know people. Now, it was said that when she did start making friends, like she really loved to entertain and she was just like bubbly and fun, but it just took her a while to open up and, you know, confide in people, which is fair. I think that's fair. So this led to a couple of friends and a great job. All in all, so far, everything sounds great. On February 23rd of 1977, Teresita left work around 5:30. She headed over to her friend Ruth's apartment, and she kind of said, hey, I can't really stay that long because I have company coming over Now, Ruth got the impression that this was like a gentleman caller, but because Teresita did kind of have trust issues, she didn't open up a whole lot. So Ruth didn't really feel like she could press it. She figured, I'll find out about this guy later if it gets serious, and just kind of left it at that. So she didn't really know anything. So Teresita leaves. 8:40 p.m. Teresita's neighbors on the 15th floor of this apartment complex start to smell fire. Well, I mean, if you know anything about fires in apartments, people are on it. Like they got the authority, they got the landlord guy, and they're just like, hey, fire, 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 right? And so the fire department shows up and they're thinking like, oh, we're gonna come out and we're gonna rescue somebody's burnt dinner. But they were in for a complete shock when they found a naked deceased woman with a knife in her chest laying underneath a mattress that had been on fire. Immediately, it's now a homicide case. So detectives were called and notified, and they show up. And on the surface evidence, the police are thinking like, oh, this was like a robbery gone wrong. She got SA'd, and that's just like the surface general idea. However, when the testing came back, it showed that she had not been violated in any sexual way whatsoever. In fact, the coroner didn't even really believe that the knife was the reason that killed her. Like, there was enough evidence on the body to state that that wasn't really like the cause of death. So the police are really confused, which, I mean, right? Like, if somebody didn't assault her, they didn't do all these things to her. Why is she naked? Like, just those kinds of questions that you have. So because of the state of the body, the police basically decide that the killer probably wanted to burn all the evidence, but there wasn't really a lot of evidence to go off of anyway, because she didn't have like marks under her fingernails. She didn't have hair, DNA, nothing, right? And they didn't really have DNA stuff back then anyway, but they had very little to go off of other than a random note that they found that said, get tickets for AS. Now, the police didn't even know if this meant anything, because how many of us write down some like chicken scratch, I mean, as far as we know, I don't know, AS, asparagus seeds. I don't know, grasp me the straws, but we all have these like shorthand notices that we write ourselves, and the police would have no idea. I write random crap all the time. So it was like, we don't know if this is evidence, we don't know what this is, but they kind of put it in the file. They got something here, but other than that, that's all they got to go off of. And months start going by without anyone bringing the killer to justice. So the fear that this case is going to go cold is becoming a quick reality. Like quick reality. Police decide to look into everybody that could possibly be connected with her, but they're just not finding anything. Like nobody's testimonies, nobody's like alibis, like nothing's giving red flags. And so they don't really know what to do moving forward. It's just like, we got nothing. Like, this guy is going to get off scot-free, and we don't know what we're going to do here. But then one day, when Detective Joseph Statula, like whatever his name is, comes in for work, he is surprised because there is a note on his desk. So basically, he comes into work one day and he's got a note on his desk that's like, hey, you need to contact the Evanston Police Department because they have something to tell you against the Teresita Basa case. And of course, he's like, what? Like this, maybe this is good. Maybe we're going to get somewhere. He was not in for what was about to happen. He was not prepared. Not prepared at all. So he calls the Evanston Police Department, and they basically tell him to contact this lady. I'm so going to butcher her name. I apologize. Remabias? by Remy Bias. Luckily, she goes by Remy. And so Remy Chua and talked to her about the Teresita case. Now, Detective Joseph would end up hearing the most bizarre story of his entire career. Remy claims that she had been having dreams for several weeks that are very disturbing. One of these dreams even happened while she was in the break room of the hospital that both her and Teresita worked at. Now, there's conflicting information. Some information says that Teresita and Remy were friends, while other information says that they knew of each other, but they weren't actually friends. But I don't know if that's really valid to the story. Maybe it will with like coming up with a conclusion about it all. She's upset because she falls asleep in the break room and basically thinks she has a vision of Teresita. And Teresita is telling her, like, hey, I need you to avenge me. I need you to go to the police, tell them who murdered me. But she's so freaked out and paralyzed, and she's not sure if this is something she actually witnessed with her own eyes. She's not sure if she was dreaming, just completely freaked out. And like most of us, when you think you have a nightmare, you want to forget it. You're like doing everything in your power to get it out of your mind. Well, this is what Teresita did. And of course, as time passed, just like a dream, information becomes foggy, if you even remember it at all, like whatsoever. So she's just decided that she's going to ignore the situation altogether. Here's one of the really interesting things. Her coworkers start noticing Teresita like demeanor in Remy. What I mean by that is Remy started like morphing in to the character of Teresita. Her mannerisms, things she liked, things she disliked, Remy all of a sudden started like mimicking the way she said things or how she would hold things or how she would do things. And this caused people to get very uncomfortable with her. Remy would actually be let go from the hospital, and people believe that that's why she was let go, but she would say that it wasn't. There was other talk that she had to dispute with a coworker named Allan. She never really said why she got the axe. She said that it was a really good thing for her because she had been stressing out and she needed some R&R. So I don't know. I guess it's one of those good times when you get fired and you're grateful for it. She was definitely ready to go home and have some peace and quiet. Now, Remy was actually married to a doctor, Dr. Chua, and he worked at the same hospital that Teresita and Remy worked at. Except the difference is he didn't know Teresita. So when like she had her tragedy, he didn't know her. So, I mean, you can still be sad and be shocked and all that, but there was no personal connection to her that we know of or that he even remembers having. This story gets real strange really quickly because Dr. Chua walks into the bedroom one day where his wife Remy is napping, and he notices that she is acting a little strange. She's sleeping, but maybe like the idea that you would get if you walked in on like your husband, your wife, your child, somebody who's currently in maybe like a bad dream and they're kind of moaning and upset. But then all of a sudden, Remy like opens her eyes, looks at Dr. Chua, and has a completely different voice. Now his wife starts speaking in her sleep in a voice that didn't sound like her voice. And the voice called to Dr. Chua. Now, the voice change all on its own would be really concerning. Like, why does my spouse sound that way? But also, if you're married, why would you call your spouse Dr. Chua? Why wouldn't you call him like his first name or whatever pet nicknames that couples give each other? So this kind of was alarming to him because he's like, what in the world's going on? Dr. Chua, like I'm your husband. And the voice change was actually in their native tongue called Tagalog. Oi, I'm so sorry. But the thing is, his wife knew the language, but the accent was different. The way that I took this in reading the information was it would be like the difference between somebody who lived in Louisiana speaking English versus maybe somebody living in Kentucky speaking English. They're both speaking the same language, but you can tell that they're from different parts based off of the accents. I could be wrong. That's just how I took it. So this was really like threw off the doctor. And the voice said this: I am Teresita Basa. Doctor, I would like to ask you for your help. The man who murdered me is still at large. Then the voice went on to say who the murderer was and how the murder was committed. Dr. Chua knew that his wife was going through a lot of stress and kind of was hoping that this was her body's way of just releasing that in her sleep. He wakes her up. She has no memory of what had happened. And like any logical minded doctor who doesn't believe in the paranormal, he's trying to figure out how to write this off. My wife is going crazy and the baby. She's just been thinking about the situation. She just got fired. So hopefully this is all just some weird situation we never have to deal with. He pushes it out of his mind. However, as soon as he basically gets to starting to forget about this whole weird incident, Remy would be possessed by the spirit of Teresita again. And this time she would ask Dr. Chua, why haven't you gone to the police? Why are you not helping me? Why are you staying silent? Dr. Chua tells the alleged Teresita that he can't just go to the police. They're not going to believe him. They're going to think he's crazy. They're going to think he's absurd. But the spirit of Teresita actually understands what Dr. Chua is saying. So this time she tells Dr. Chua that she has concrete evidence. She tells him, the person who murdered me took some of my jewelry, and I'm going to give you the names of some of my relatives and phone numbers on contacting them so that when the jewelry is found in the possession of my murderer, they're going to know that this is true. Oh, okay then. So this is enough evidence that Dr. Chua feels he can actually go to the police, which he does. And this is where we are with Detective Joseph. Now, Detective Joseph is hearing this story, and I can't imagine what he's thinking. Okay, yeah, I can. Probably what I thought, like, okay. But something stands out to him. The alleged murderer is named Allan Showery. Get tickets for AS? Now, Dr. Chua wouldn't know this. They didn't release any of this information to the public. So it wasn't like he was able to conspire and go, AS, okay, these people in the hospital have these initials. So this was a huge moment for the detective to think maybe there's some value in what's being said. He figures at the very least there is no harm, no foul in checking into Allan Showery. So Detective Allan immediately goes to him and decides we're going to have another interview. So what happens is when they're going through the notes, they realize that they have already interviewed Allan Showery. And in the beginning, his story sounded airtight. There didn't seem to be any red flags. However, this time, his story is inconsistent and it doesn't match the original statement given. So head scratching starts happening here. So who is Allan Showery? He works at this exact same hospital that Teresita, Remy, and Dr. Chua all work at as a respiratory therapist. He also lives with his live-in girlfriend, Yanka Kalmuk. Now, in the beginning of the investigation, Allan had been questioned and he came freely to the interview. So the police are thinking, okay, at least he's really cooperative. But we're also going to ask Yanka some questions. First, they tell her, can you please come to the station? And by chance, could you bring the recent jewelry, if you were given any, by Allan? Like anything you've gotten from him in the last year, we would like to see it. And she completely obliges. In Allan's story, things start coming together that he had the opportunity and possibility to murder Teresita. He had not mentioned how much their paths actually crossed in the beginning. Teresita and Allan actually had the same bus route to the hospital. So when their job shifts coincided, they would be on the bus at the same time several times a week. Not only that, Teresita had recently joined a band and was talking to Allan about it, even mentioning that Allan she could come watch the band. Well, Allan had said he didn't have the financial funds to go see the band, and Teresita said, "That's okay, I can get you tickets." Get tickets for AS. The detectives are thinking this is a solid lead. So they push Allan a little bit more to where he says that he plays the drums. He had offered to maybe be a drummer in her band and that he did little odds and end jobs for her. She had no problem telling him, "Hey, I've been having some issues with my television set. Would you be able to maybe come fix it for me?" Allan said he could do that. Now, when they went over to talk to Yanka, this is where his story kind of falls apart. They mentioned to Yanka that Allan said he was going to Teresita's house on the day that she was actually murdered to work on her television set. To which Yanka kind of busts up laughing because she says that his technical skills were lacking and there'd be no way for him to fix a television set. Why would you offer to do that if you don't know what you're doing? So this is a little suspicious. Also, she brings her jewelry box. She puts the jewelry out on the table and has one of these witnesses' relatives that was presented by Dr. Chua look through things. Now, as he's looking through the jewelry, he doesn't notice anything that he's familiar with. Nothing looks like something that Teresita would have had. But when Yanka lifted up her hand from behind the table that she was sitting at, he noticed a single pearled ring on her finger. And he said, "That ring is Teresita's." So the detectives asked Yanka where she got the ring from, and she said, "I actually got it in February as a late Christmas gift from Allan." What else did you get from Allan? She also brings forth a pendant that the relative also said was Teresita's. So now with this new solid evidence, they go into Allan and they confront him. They're like, "You're caught." Which Allan pretty much confesses to the murder right away. They book him. Now, Allan's lawyer would try to redact Allan's statement, saying that to his knowledge, no one had ever been jailed or put to jail or arrested for paranormal information. But the judge said that they would go ahead and let it stand because the prosecution said that they weren't going to go along with any of the paranormal stuff. They were going to use the cold, hard facts, and that it didn't matter where the tip had come from. It mattered that he had been caught in possession of stolen goods from the deceased victim and had a confession. Although all was well, he went ahead and went to trial. Now, the first trial would end in a hung jury. And while he was awaiting his second trial, he just went ahead and pled guilty for a lesser reduced sentence. Allan was released in 1983, and as far as we know, he went crime-free for the rest of his days. Some people believe that Teresita visited him, her spirit, in jail and got him to plead guilty, while other people think that maybe just the fear that Teresita would haunt him the rest of his days if he continued forward in his crime spree was enough to keep him on the straight and narrow. Here's a recap of what Allan said happened on the day that Teresita died. Allan said that he would go to Teresita's house. Now, because he had done little odd ends jobs before, Teresita had always given him a $5 bill. He came to the conclusion that she must have a lot of money because she always seemed to have $5 bills on her. So he was going to break into her house and see what he could steal. He had gotten really desperate because rent was due, and he just felt like there was no other way than to just steal the money. So when he got to Teresita's house, he immediately strangled her from behind in an attempt to make it look like a SA robbery situation, he stripped her naked, took a knife from the kitchen, and stabbed her in the back with it, then moving the mattress on top of her and planning to light it on fire in hopes that all the evidence would burn away and he would never be caught. The really crazy thing was Teresita didn't have a whole lot of money. In fact, she ended up only having $40 in her apartment. So her life in the end to Allan was only worth $40. It's really unfortunate to see that people could be stuffed out for such a little amount. Not that it's unfortunate that anybody is murdered, but I just feel like it's really sad. She had so much potential. She seemed to just really have such a beautiful talent, and she didn't make it very long. 42 is not very old. So unfortunately, Allan, who only ended up serving 6 years in prison, just doesn't seem very justified. But what do you think? Do you think that Teresita's ghost from beyond the grave came back and avenged her? And if you think that, why not other ghosts? Or do you think that Remy maybe knew information about the situation but didn't know how to come forward to police about it? Do you think that maybe she was afraid that if police didn't arrest Allan, she would possibly be in danger herself? But then why go through such an elaborate hoax with your husband? Or did Dr. Chua know and it was something they came up with together? I don't know. What do you think? Leave your comments below. I'd love to hear them. And stay safe out there and stay spooky. Bye.